Hello, this is property market commentator and analyst John Lindeman. I've been researching the property market for over 20 years and I've spoken with thousands of property investors and they've told me about the mistakes that they've made. So what I've done is summarise these into the 7 deadly mistakes property investors make. That is the ones they make most often, and I'll show you how you can avoid them. The first deadly mistake is buying with your heart and not your head. This occurs when you fall in love with a property for all the wrong reasons. You might be on holidays and you think, wow, this is a great location. We can rent this property out. We can come here on holidays ourselves. We might even retire here. But because it's such a popular holiday location, prices are certain to go up in future and therefore it'll be a great investment. Now that's typical heart, not head type thinking. What you should be looking at is, well, what is the rent demand for this type of property? Is it going to be constant and increasing in future? And what is the future buyer demand for this type of property? Is this the sort of property that people will buy in future? And will there be a shortage of properties, or will there be more development and a surplus and therefore prices could go down instead of up? That's using your head instead of your heart. The second deadly mistake is the fear of missing out. The people hear about investment opportunities all the time and they might be told things like, these are selling faster than hotcakes, get in quick or you'll miss out. And so they all rush together to buy properties. And if enough people do this at the same time, what you get is a property market boom. So the problem with this is, of course, that booms will reach a peak and then they'll bust. And if you buy at the peak of the market, you could find that property prices will actually fall. Never buy in property market booms. Always buy in areas that are about to boom rather than those where booms are actually occurring. Mistake number 3 is relying on the wrong people. Almost everyone is a property market expert. And the reason that so many people out there are so-called property market experts is because it's unregulated. So anyone can say, I'm a property market expert. And a lot of these people are actually wolves in sheep's clothing. What they're doing is they're putting forward properties for you to buy that they'll make a profit from. Now, you may not do well out of that investment at all, but that's not what concerns them. So how do you sniff out the wolves? What you do is you need to find out how they make their money. Is it by selling property? What is their authority? How good is their credibility? What is their track record? And have they ever been investigated by ASIC or trade practices? How do you do that? Well, you simply Google their names and Google will tell you all about them, the good and the bad. The fourth deadly mistake is relying on past performance. People will tell me, I only buy in areas with consistent past growth. So I look at areas where prices have gone up reliably every year because I know that these are the areas where prices are likely to continue to go up. And yet other people will do the opposite. They'll say, oh no, what you've got to do is buy in areas that haven't gone up because they're overdue for growth. So the longer that prices haven't gone up, the more impetus there is for prices to suddenly boom. Now, the problem with these strategies on past performance, of course, is that they contradict each other completely. So what should you do? Well, don't rely on past performance at all. It might be interesting to know whether an area has gone up or down in price. That's great. But don't rely on that to tell you what's likely to happen in future, because the dynamics that control the housing market could be totally different in future to what they were in the past. Deadly mistake number 5 is relying on future infrastructure development. There are many, many different types of development, and a lot of investors seem to think that virtually all of them will lead to greater housing demand. For example, there might be a new shopping centre built in the area, and so you think, oh, that's going to increase the demand for housing. Well, it will certainly increase demand for shoppers, but these shoppers may come from suburbs outside the area. They just simply commute to and from that shopping centre, so they're not actually increasing housing demand in the area at all. And likewise, sporting stadiums and events, big stadiums are built exclusively for certain types of events. Well, they'll certainly bring in more sports fans, but this may not increase the desirability of an area for homeowners or investors. In fact, it might do the opposite because of the noise and congestion that these sorts of stadiums can produce. Hospitals are also touted as infrastructure demand, housing demand generators. In other words, they'll provide more housing demand when a new hospital is being built. Well, what will happen is there'll be more patients, obviously. That's what they're built for. But these patients may come from existing properties in the area already, so they're not actually going to live near the hospital just because it's there when they can easily drive to and from their existing homes. So it's not essentially the case that hospitals will increase the demand for property at all. Universities and other teaching institutions are also touted as demand generators for property. Well, a new university or an expansion of a university will certainly lead to more students, but those students could come from existing areas where they live. They simply commute to and from the university, so it won't increase the demand for housing unless it's a sort of a captive market, a regional market where students have to live near the university. And if the university doesn't provide accommodation, then the demand for student rentals may indeed increase. So here's a possibility of increased housing demand. It depends on the circumstances, and you need to research that. Highway infrastructure and highway improvements can have a definite effect on housing demand. So what happens here is that when a highway is duplicated, it means that areas become easier, quicker and safer to access. So more people will want to live in the areas serviced by those highways. A definite impetus to more housing demand. Another form of transport infrastructure that can improve housing demand dramatically is when new railway lines or new railway stations are built. This is the new railway station in Mernda, which is an outer suburb of Melbourne, and when that station was completed, it dramatically improved access to the Melbourne CBD, and so housing demand improved as well dramatically. So railways can have a positive impact on housing demand. Deadly mistake number 6, paying too much for the property. I always recommend that you only ever buy established properties, and that's because if you buy house and land packages or off-the-plan unit investments, you don't really know what those properties are worth, and also the incentives such as rental guarantees are loaded into the price, so you'll be paying more for those properties anyway. How do you find out, though, the value of an established property? Well, one way is to use comparative recent nearby sales. So you look at sales of similar properties and compare those prices to the one you're intending to buy. You can use the last sale price plus market movement. So that is what the property last sold for plus the amount that prices have moved since then in the suburb. You can use the adjusted median sale price. So if the property is fairly typical, you simply look up the median sale price for that type of property in that area, and that'll give you an idea of what the property is valued at. But the best way of all is to get free value estimates. As I've done, get a property value estimate. You get a lot of different sites offering free property reports. Now, a lot of these are just lead generators for real estate agents, so don't use them. What you do is you go to this one here, Property Value, powered by CoreLogic, and that's a reputable data provider. When you go there, you just simply type in the residential address and you'll get a great estimate of the value of any property anywhere in Australia. That's a free service. You can use their paid service, but you'll get a good idea just with the free service itself. The last fatal mistake, selling at the wrong time. And this is something it's easy to avoid. It's terrible when it happens. And this is an example of how it has happened. This was a home unit development, a high-rise development in North Sydney, and it was called Aquarel. They had a grand opening. You can see the big ads there, full-page ads in the papers and in the media. And those units, this was in 2003, and they sold for $1.45 million each. The reason for the high price for these two-bedders is because you had magnificent views of Sydney Harbour, the Harbour Bridge, and you were just a short hop by ferry across from the Sydney CBD. They all sold quickly, and then I watched and waited to see what would happen when the first unit was actually sold after the initial opening. So all of these were bought, but none of them had been resold. I had to wait for 10 years until the first unit was sold, and there it is. That was they used the same picture as they had 10 years before in the original promotion. That unit went in 2013 for 1.26 million. In other words, there was a 14% loss. Somebody had bought the unit, hung onto it for 10 years, and then gave up and said, right, I'm getting rid of it. They'd lost money and probably never bought another investment property ever again. Now, the tragedy was the person who bought that property discovered house unit prices went up by 50% the next year, and so they made a 50% profit on their investment. So selling at the right time is critical. How do you know? How can you avoid making those sorts of deadly mistakes and get the best possible results? Well, what I've done is I've produced a property investment education course called 7 Steps to Success. And this course tells you everything you need to know about how to make the best decisions and how to avoid mistakes. It covers all of the different steps of property investing. It's a self-directed login access course, so you can log in anywhere, anytime, and simply look at all the materials, the videos, and discover how the market works, how to find areas with the best growth potential, where and when to buy, how to narrow down your search, what to buy, how much to pay, and when to sell. There are templates and tools, questionnaires, checklists, PowerPoint shows, and presentations covering everything I've learned in 20 years of researching the market and over 40 years of successful property investment experience. So it's all there for you. And in addition, you get access to all my published free reports for free, exclusive access, and that's advanced access. So you're the first people to get access to our reports. And also videos, spotlight videos, as I travel around Australia looking at different markets and making commentary on them, their potential for investors. These videos are added to the course all the time. So I recommend thoroughly that you look at the 7 Steps Property Investment Education course as a way of becoming educated to learn how to make the best possible decisions and avoid making mistakes.